So, friends of the channel, Bleeding Full, had this article: anemic box office numbers lowest since the global pandemic. It was real bad. So, Deadline is reporting that the global box office is at its lowest point since Super Bowl weekend during the pandemic. Last year, Death of the Nile opened for a mere 12.8 million. The new movie to crack the top 10 this weekend is Lisa Frankenstein, number 2, with 3.8 million. Top spot was Argyle. Top spot was $6.5 million. Beekeeper, 3.4. That was fifth week. Wonka with 3. I mean, it's terrible. This was awful. Absolutely awful. I think we've seen theatres shut down and a lot of chains going through a lot of problems. I think it's going to get worse.
You're welcome.
What the hell was that?
Joe.
Hey?
That was Joe.
Oh, you didn't say it long enough. I didn't hear it. I couldn't tell that was. Anyway, what guys, what do we think?
You're welcome, but I forgot where I'm at.
Thoughts? Worst box office. Only going to get worse, I think.
Oh, I'm with you. I mean, the rest of this week is going to prove it out. Can you imagine that we are going into the opening of a superhero film with Chick Power that is getting an extra couple of days of box office, and it may, if it's lucky, eke out a $20 million open.
Yeah, I don't think it's... Well, the amount that I've seen booked in, maybe it will actually do that now, to be fair.
I'm just saying, that's not enough domestically. Internationally, I mean, you Brits seem to love it, so we'll see what happens there. But we'll see.
Well, no, that movie theatre that I looked at for Madam Web, that's one of the cheapest movie theatres around at the moment, so that's probably why. So, it's like $7 a ticket. It's nothing.
So if you take the 20 million that it's going to pull domestically and internationally, it might pull 40 if it's lucky, depending upon the market. It is getting a China release, which I reported yesterday in my video on it. Yeah. You can go watch that video.
Superhero stuff.
Though. Yeah.
Wow. That's going to do terrible there.
It is. Although, I mean, there are 3 very pretty things to look at in that film, so it might do all right. We'll see. If they change all of the localization in it to something that makes sense, the film has a chance. But maybe not. Anyway, so yeah, this is going to probably earn 60 million max over this weekend globally, and then it will be a wet fart after that because there won't be anybody to go see
the movie.
Yeah.
It's terrible time to be an exhibitor, a theatre owner. They have nothing. It's such a bad...
They have some classic films doing all right, but yeah, you're right. Not on the level they should.
Yeah, but this is the issue, isn't it, right? Hey?
It's Hollywood's fault for making shit nobody wants to see.
Well, yeah, this is what I was about to say, is you've got... It's such a bad business because it's a symbiotic relationship. The theatres, have to rely on Hollywood making good movies. They are at Hollywood's whim, they're just like, oh, please make a good movie, please.
Well, hopefully we're at that point now where things are getting so bad like they were in the 60s that we're just 1 or 2 movies away from getting a new independent revolution. Easy Rider got us out of that rut. So we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully. Madam Web to me is just more of the same crap we didn't ask for. And just as most things we didn't ask for, they're not going to get money out of it. They're just lucky that women liked Timothée Chalamet, or Wonka would have been a huge disaster.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I do wonder. I mean, my thesis, they've not been showing any older stuff going around.
Oh, we've gotten a lot of revivals here, especially this year because 1984 was a huge. In 1994 were two very big years for movies, so you're
Right,
getting
right.
all kinds of great revivals this year. In fact,
God
people are
damn.
talking
Wish
about
we
tickets
were.
they got for stuff coming up already this next week. A lot of people went and seen the original. The original Dune is coming up here. Plus, people have been seeing the one for before the second one that's coming out. So, plus that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks too. I think that'll really give the box office a boost. I think
Yeah.
that Dune is going to do a lot better than people are anticipating it in the media anyway.
Interesting. Interesting. Anything to add to this culture? I mean, movies dying. Do you think they're dying? Do you think they'll last? Because a lot of companies are going into administration and bankruptcy and things like that at the moment as well.
I
So
I well, yeah, look, the European things are more likely to get caught up in it all, um, for a
I
variety of
thought there was an
reasons.
American one that recently.
Yeah, but they were able to bounce right back, and they'll be fine. There, as Tom already indicated, they're going to pivot to like events rather than necessarily films. Not to mention the fact that I may take advantage of my local theater and use it for like a meetup or something, or like a gaming tournament, or like just to
Mm,
rent out for like to show off like a movie nobody's seen. Like maybe I'll run my private copy of Song of the South at a theater.
maybe we could do an H cast there in
Yeah,
person.
yeah, and I think, like I said, you can do events now. I mean, it's kind of worth it. I mean, consider the room is capacity for 500 people, and you can
Mm,
project and bring in your own media using their equipment and their sound system, which is exemplary. And there's a lot of upside there. So um, I don't know. I mean, it'll really help independent film. I think that we're going to start
mm.
to see independent film. We're going to start to see things like what's the thing that just came out that's the religious program that The Chosen season 4 episodes 1 to 3. It was actually in third place during the last box office weekend as far as earnings go. And
Oh,
that
okay.
that's a television program that's putting 3 episodes. This is by Fathom Events. They're putting 3 episodes of the show up at a time, and it's pulling in money.
Mm,
Imagine being able to go to your local theater and watching a football match, or
true. Yeah.
those other types of things. I mean, there's room there, but I think you're going to find people like me, and you especially, somebody who has experience making short films, and things like that, putting their films out in theaters because they can make money on them,
Well,
right?
and what culture's kind of talking about is the old school way they used to four wall theaters
Yeah,
regionally, and
Mm,
the doors are opening to that now, especially after COVID. Because during COVID, there was a lot of theaters that were allowing people to rent out the entire theater and
yeah,
show whatever the hell they
yeah.
wanted.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think that's kind of the next logical step. It's not that's the one thing that kind of gets between, because basically outside of talent, obviously,
Mm,
you can make a movie now for a lot cheaper than you'd think. The studios don't
yeah.
want you to know that, but it's real. Like you have in your hand, in your pocket, whatever, maybe you're watching this on your phone, you basically have an entire studio right there in your hands, right?
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
most phones
for a
can.
short film, I mean, it's generally
Regardless,
speaking
point
a
being, you
thousand.
can. Yeah, but regardless, you have something in your hands right now that can actually film in 4K. I mean, I do express that
True.
sound is very important. Like I cannot stress enough to, if you want your project to stand above and beyond anybody else's, make sure you work your sound out, get mics, get decent stuff worked out. You don't want to necessarily use your phone, but you could. My point being is you could make a movie for next to nothing. Talent is the main thing. Is like as long as you're talented, people will watch it. Like I've seen some of the crappiest looking videos on Twitter and YouTube in my life, but they're still funny because the people are talented. At the end of the day, though, you're right. Yeah, you can do it for pretty cheap, even make it look pretty professional. In fact, the guys over at Geeks and Gamers and stuff are doing some stuff right now. I guess that looks pretty good.
Oh, the Epic verse. Yeah,
Yeah, the Epicverse stuff.
yeah,
So I mean, even that, like right there, look at what they're able to put together with probably very little means compared to Hollywood. The big
yeah.
thing, my point was I was getting to was the big hurdle is advertising, right? Because that's the thing that
Mm,
we keep trying to tell people is that they're spending just as much on advertising in most cases as these movies cost to make. So that's the big hurdle that a lot of these indies run into is, sure, you can make a movie for next to nothing, but to compete with a movie like Spider-Man or Ghostbusters or something like that, you have to have a couple $100 million or $100 million almost to advertise your movie just so enough people even know it exists. Like, how often do we sit here and we talk about movies and one of us or multiple of us on the panel don't even know it exists? Right? There's a failure in marketing, right? Like, they already have that gap, that problem, because they're spending less and less all the time on marketing, as culture, and I'm sure is touched on in many videos too. Like, that's one area they've cut back quite a bit, and they really concentrate on certain things. Like, I'm sure Disney's going to dump all its money this year into advertising Deadpool 3. It's the only sure thing they got. Other than that, I doubt you're going to hear much about any other Disney movie this year because they just ain't going to have the money to spend. In fact, speaking of re-releases, Star Wars Episode 1 is getting re-released, but you probably wouldn't know that, Nate, because they haven't done shit for advertising for it. They're not going to. They're not going to take
I know about it.
Like, I mean, it's just going to get put out there, and people are either going to go see it or they're not going to go see it, and that's just what it is. So at the end of the day, I mean, that's the big hurdle. But if you can four-wall some of these theaters and some of these smaller towns and some of these regions, you might be able to roll out a movie and make a hell of a lot of money off of it and have the next Evil Dead or Clerks or something like that that pops out of nowhere, even though it was made on a phone for next to nothing. If it's intriguing and people enjoy it, you could be the next indie thing. And that's the thing. There's been a gatekeeping of new voices in Hollywood. If you're not of a certain demographic and a certain this, that, or other, basically, if you're white and straight, you're not getting in. Right. So I don't want to get down all that shit. And I know I've already rambled long enough about this, but that's my whole point is this does open the door for indies to actually get their foot in the door of getting their movies in theaters and people actually seeing them. And it's a lot cheaper to advertise regionally than it is to advertise coast to coast, which is basically what movies used to do. Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween, great example of a movie that rolled out that way. Rolled out from city to city to city. Most people didn't see Halloween until 1979 because it just spent that much time in the theaters going from town to town to town, gaining momentum and word of mouth.
Yep.
Yeah.
And again, I think we can, like I said, I think we can build it up. And actually we have somebody in the chat who does sound for mostly independent films right now. It's busier than ever.
But he probably knows exactly what I'm talking about. That can make or break your entire project.
Oh, yeah.
Trust me.
Sound is super important. It's one of the most important parts of a film, quite frankly. Zero Sukio super chatted and chimed into this part of the conversation. Says, if Hollywood removed the agenda from their movies, wrote good stories for their movies, and chose the right talent, and stop editing adaptations into agenda stories, people might want to watch movies again. Cannot argue with that.
Yeah, there's no arguing that. That's 100%.
Cannot argue with that, buddy.
Yeah. I think a few movies are going to do okay this year, but this is going to be a very thin year for Hollywood, and I think they're going to feel it.
Well, and you know what? It serves them right. Actually, let me put it this way. Disney's going to be the ones that are going to feel it the worst because they refuse to adapt. They are fully captured. Bob Iger intends to keep them that way. There you are.
I agree with you, and I think Warner Brothers is going to come out ahead again this year.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think Universal is going to come out ahead this year.
They're going to do okay, but I think Warner's got it in the bag with Godzilla and Kong and Dune right now. I think those two are like it's theirs to lose at this point, basically, with those two movies.
Yep. Well, let's shuffle on now. Actually.